In December 1900, a relief vessel arrived at a remote Scottish island to rotate the lighthouse crew. The light was still functioning. The last meal was half-eaten on the table. One man's coat was still hanging by the door. The other two coats were missing, and the three men who had been living and working there were simply gone. No bodies, no tracks, no disturbance. The lighthouse logbook's final entries described the men crying and praying in the days before they disappeared. No explanation has ever been confirmed. In the early 1990s, residents of Taos, New Mexico began reporting a sound. Not a loud sound. A low, persistent hum like a diesel engine idling just outside, except there was no engine. Earplugs didn't stop it. Going outside didn't change it. It was louder indoors than out. It drove people from their homes. It caused insomnia, nosebleeds, depression. The United States Congress commissioned a scientific investigation. Researchers from national laboratories deployed sensitive equipment across the entire region. They found nothing. The hum continued. It continues today. Since the 1950s, on a stone bridge in Scotland, dogs have been leaping to their deaths, not from different spots, not by accident, from the exact same section of the same parapet wall, falling 50 feet to the rocks below. Some die, some survive. The ones that survive, when brought back to the bridge, attempt to jump again. Scientists investigated. They proposed an explanation involving the scent of mink in the gorge below. The explanation doesn't account for why the pattern existed before the mink arrived. It doesn't account for why surviving dogs returned to jump again. 3 cases, all documented, all investigated by credible institutions, all still unexplained. This is not the paranormal of dark rooms and Ouija boards. This is the paranormal of government investigations, scientific instruments, and behavior that defies every rational framework applied to it. Tonight we examine 3 cases where the evidence is measurable, real, and without resolution. Let's begin with the disappearance that inspired more theories than perhaps any other mystery in British history. The Flannan Isles are a group of small, uninhabited rocky islands located approximately 20 miles west of the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides, Scotland. They are remote, windswept, and surrounded by some of the most treacherous waters in the North Atlantic. In 1895, the Northern Lighthouse Board constructed a lighthouse on Eilean Mole, the largest of the Flannan Isles, specifically to warn passing ships of the dangerous rocks. The lighthouse was staffed by rotating teams of 3 keepers, who worked shifts of several weeks before being relieved by fresh crew. On December 7, 1900, 3 men were stationed at the Flannan Isles lighthouse. James Duckett, 43, the principal keeper, experienced, steady, with a long record of reliable service. He had a wife and 4 children on the mainland. Thomas Marshall, 28, first assistant keeper, a younger man, competent but with a reputation for occasional erratic behavior in rough conditions. Donald MacArthur, occasional keeper, substituting for the regular second assistant who was on leave due to illness. The lighthouse was functioning normally on December 7th. Ships passing in the following days reported the light was operating as expected. The lighthouse logbook, recovered during the subsequent investigation, contained entries up through December 15, 1900. The entries from December 12 through December 15 were unusual. December 12, Thomas Marshall wrote that the weather had turned severe, that James Duckett had been very quiet, and that Donald MacArthur had been crying. This was noted as highly unusual. Both men were experienced sailors accustomed to rough conditions. December 13, Marshall wrote that storms had continued, that the sea is calm, contradicting the previous day's entry about severe weather. Duckett had been praying. December 15, a final brief entry noting conditions, then nothing. On December 26, 11 days after the final log entry, the relief vessel Hesperus arrived at Eilean Mole to rotate the crew. As the vessel approached, the crew noticed no flag had been raised to signal the keeper's awareness of the ship's arrival, the standard protocol. No one appeared on the landing platform to meet them. Captain Jim Harvey sent a signal flare. No response. He waited. No response. Realizing something was wrong, he sent crew member Joseph Moore ashore. What Moore found inside the lighthouse? The entrance gate was closed but unlocked. The door to the lighthouse was open. The clock inside had stopped. The fire in the kitchen range had gone out, meaning it had not been tended for some time. 2 of the 3 oilskin coats, worn in severe weather, were missing from their hooks. 1 coat, belonging to Donald MacArthur, remained hanging by the door. On the kitchen table, a half-eaten meal, 1 overturned chair. The meal appeared to have been interrupted suddenly and not returned to. None of the 3 men were anywhere on the island. Investigation of the exterior revealed damage consistent with severe storm activity. The West Landing, one of 2 access platforms on the island, had suffered significant damage. A concrete block estimated to weigh over a ton had been displaced from its foundation. Iron railings on the platform had been bent and twisted. A life buoy stored in a crate at the top of the platform, approximately 100 feet above sea level, had been swept away. This damage was recorded as unusual, even for the severe storms typical of the area. The official investigation, conducted by the Northern Lighthouse Board, concluded that the 3 men had gone to secure equipment on the West Landing during or before a storm surge, and had been swept into the sea by a rogue wave. The theory held that 2 men went first, explaining the 2 missing oilskin coats, and the third, MacArthur, followed so hastily that he left his coat behind. Critics of this explanation note, if conditions were calm enough to go to the landing platform without a coat, why would 2 men take their coats? If conditions were severe enough to produce a rogue wave large enough to move a 1-ton concrete block and sweep 3 experienced keepers to their deaths, why would they have been on the platform at all? The log entries describing Duckett's unusual quietness and MacArthur's crying, if genuine, suggest psychological distress days before the disappearance. What caused it? Alternative theories have ranged from the plausible rogue waves are documented phenomena in the North Atlantic that can appear without warning even in calm conditions, to the fantastical alien abduction, sea monsters, supernatural forces. No bodies were ever recovered. No physical evidence beyond the storm damage was found. The official explanation, rogue wave, remains the most scientifically credible but can never be confirmed. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse was subsequently automated. It still operates today, flashing its light across the same waters where James Duckett, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur worked their final shift. The island is occasionally visited by boat tours. The lighthouse stands. The logbook is preserved. And the question of what those final entries mean, why experienced men were crying and praying days before their deaths, has never been answered. From 3 men who vanished on a remote island, to a sound that has driven entire families from their homes. Taos is a small city in northern New Mexico, population approximately 6,000. It sits at 6,969 feet elevation at the base of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. It is an arts community, a tourist destination, and the home of one of the most persistently investigated acoustic anomalies in the world. The hum. Reports of a persistent, low-frequency humming sound in the Taos area began appearing in significant numbers in the early 1990s. By 1993, the complaints had become widespread enough that local residents formally petitioned the United States Congress for an investigation. Congress responded. In 1994, scientists from multiple institutions were commissioned to investigate, including researchers from Sandia National Laboratories, Los Alamos National Laboratory, the University of New Mexico, and other academic institutions. The investigation deployed sensitive acoustic and seismic monitoring equipment throughout the Taos region. Researchers conducted extensive interviews with residents who reported hearing the sound. What they found: approximately 2% of the Taos population reported hearing the hum. Hearers described it consistently, a low-pitched sound, similar to a diesel engine idling at a distance or a large machine operating underground. It was omnidirectional, meaning it seemed to have no single source direction. It was louder at night than during the day. It was louder inside buildings than outside. Earplugs did not reduce it. It could not be recorded on standard audio equipment. The scientific investigation could not identify the source. Standard acoustic monitoring found no corresponding sound waves in the frequency ranges where the hum was reported. Seismic monitoring found no unusual geological activity. No industrial or military operations in the area corresponded to the sound's characteristics. The investigation was unable to confirm the hum's physical existence through instrumentation, but also unable to dismiss it. The 1994 report concluded that the hum was real in the sense that hearers genuinely experienced something, but the source and nature of the phenomenon remained undetermined. Researcher Joe Mullins from the University of New Mexico, who led portions of the investigation, stated publicly that a small percentage of hearers appeared to be experiencing a genuinely unusual acoustic stimulus, not tinnitus, not psychological suggestion, something external, but the equipment available could not capture it. The hum has never been explained. Taos is not unique. The Taos hum is actually one of many documented hum phenomena around the world. Similar reports have come from Bristol, England. The Bristol hum, reported since the 1970s, affecting approximately 2% of the local population. Windsor, Ontario. The Windsor hum, subsequently traced partially to blast furnace operations at a steel mill on Zug Island, Michigan across the border. This is one of the few cases where a partial source was identified. Largs, Scotland. Bondi, Australia. Various locations in Germany and Scandinavia. The impact on individuals who hear the Taos hum has been documented as severe. Multiple residents have been forced to leave their homes. Sleep disruption is near universal among hearers. Reported symptoms include persistent headaches, nausea, anxiety, depression, and in severe cases, suicidal ideation attributed to the inability to escape the sound. One resident described sitting in a silent room and feeling as though a truck was idling just outside, constantly, without ceasing for years. There is no truck, there is nothing measurable, but the sound does not stop. Current scientific theories suggest the Taos hum and similar phenomena globally may be caused by very low frequency, VLF, submarine communication signals, which use extreme low frequency waves to communicate with submarines and can penetrate buildings. Microseismic activity, the constant background seismic noise of Earth itself, which spikes in certain geological areas. Natural infrasound from ocean waves, known as microbaromes, generating frequencies that interact with specific geological and architectural environments in ways not fully understood. Industrial sources too distant and diffuse to identify as a single point. None of these theories conclusively explains the Taos hum's characteristics, particularly its indoor amplification, its resistance to physical soundproofing, and its selective hearing. Why only 2% of the population can detect it? As of today, the Taos hum is still reported by Taos residents. New hearers report it regularly. It has never stopped. The source has never been found. The mechanism has never been explained. And for the 2% who hear it, it never goes away. From a sound that can't be found, to a bridge where dogs leap to their deaths, and the ones that survive come back to jump again. Overtoun Bridge is a stone arch bridge built in 1895, spanning the Overtoun burn near Dumbarton, Scotland. It is a quiet, scenic structure on the grounds of the Overtoun estate, a Victorian Gothic mansion now used as a Christian retreat center. The bridge is unremarkable in almost every way, except that dogs have been leaping from it to their death since the 1950s, consistently, from the same spot, on the same side of the bridge. The documented pattern is specific and consistent enough to be alarming. Dogs, predominantly long-nosed breeds such as Labradors, Collies, and Retrievers, have been observed leaping over the right-hand parapet of the bridge at the same section, approximately 2/3 of the way across. The drop to the rocky gorge below is approximately 50 feet. Many dogs die on impact. Some survive. What makes the phenomenon particularly disturbing? Dogs that survive the fall when taken back over the bridge have attempted to jump again. Estimates place the total number of dog deaths at Overtoun Bridge at between 50 and 600, since records began being kept, depending on the source. The lower figure of 50 represents confirmed documented incidents. The higher figure represents local resident estimates over a longer period. The incidents are not evenly distributed. They are clustered during daylight hours. They occur most frequently in calm, clear weather. They almost never happen in rain or storm. In 2006, animal behaviorist Dr. David Sands was commissioned to investigate the phenomenon. He spent time at the bridge observing dog behavior, analyzing the environment, and attempting to identify a rational explanation. His finding: the most likely cause was olfactory smell. The rocky gorge beneath the bridge contains a significant population of mink, which moved into the area in the late 1970s and early 1980s after being released from a fur farm. Male mink produce an extraordinarily powerful musky scent, among the most potent of any small mammal. This scent is deposited throughout the rocks below the bridge and wafts upward, particularly in calm, dry weather conditions. Dr. Sands proposed that dogs with strong prey drives, particularly the long-nosed breeds most commonly seen leaping, are overwhelmed by the mink scent. The bridge's stone parapet walls prevent the dog from seeing the drop below while allowing the scent to concentrate. The dog, driven by instinct, leaps toward the scent source. This explanation accounts for several elements. The clustering in calm, dry weather, when scent carries most effectively. The prevalence of long-nosed breeds, whose olfactory sensitivity is significantly higher. The specific location on the bridge, the single spot where scent concentration is strongest due to airflow patterns. However, the explanation does not fully satisfy researchers or locals. Why do dogs that survive the fall and are brought back attempt to jump again? If the initial leap was panic or disorientation, why would a dog that experienced the fall be driven to repeat it? Why is the phenomenon so tightly concentrated at one specific section of the bridge, and not along the entire span, or at other bridges over similar terrain in the area? Why has the pattern been consistent since the 1950s, predating the widespread mink population increase that followed the 1980s farm releases? Local residents and Celtic mythology researchers have advanced an alternative framework. In Celtic tradition, certain geographic locations are considered thin places, spots where the boundary between the physical world and whatever lies beyond it is unusually permeable. Animals, particularly dogs, are believed in this tradition to be more sensitive to this boundary than humans. The specific location of Overtoun Bridge, over fast-moving water, in a gorge with particular geological characteristics, corresponds with sites traditionally identified as thin places in Scottish folklore. Whether one finds this compelling or dismissible, the pattern at Overtoun Bridge defies easy explanation. Rational, biological mechanisms have been proposed, but cannot account for all documented behaviors. The pattern has continued for 7 decades across thousands of individual dogs making independent decisions. And the dogs that survive still want to go back. 3 keepers vanished from Eilean Moor in December 1900. The logbook recorded their fear before the end. The official explanation is rogue wave. But what terrified experienced sailors enough to make them cry and pray in the days before they died? That has never been answered. The Taos hum is still heard today. People still report it, still lose sleep, still feel it in their walls. Science has studied it for 30 years and cannot identify its source. Overtoun Bridge still stands. Dogs still leap from the same spot. The ones that survive still want to jump again. 3 documented cases, physical evidence, scientific investigation, no resolution. This is why paranormal evidence matters beyond ghost stories. These aren't experiences that can be dismissed as imagination or misinterpretation. They are patterns, measurable, consistent, real. And science at its most honest says, we don't know. Drop your theory in the comments, especially on the Taos hum. Researchers are still looking for new angles on this one. Share with someone in science or engineering. These cases reward rational investigation. They just haven't been solved yet. Subscribe to WhisprFrame for more documented anomalies, where the evidence is real and the answers aren't. Because sometimes the most frightening phrase in science is the one nobody wants to say out loud. We don't know what this is.